The man who edited human DNA and shocked the world. In 2018, the scientific world was shaken by an announcement that sounded like something from science fiction. A scientist claimed he had done the impossible. He had edited the DNA of human babies before they were born. Not in theory, not in a lab experiment, but in real, living children. The announcement triggered global outrage, ethical debates, and a scientific scandal that shocked the world. Some called it a dangerous experiment on humanity. Others called it the beginning of a new era of genetic engineering. But one question remains. Did this scientist just change the future of medicine or cross a line humanity was never meant to cross? This is the story of He Jiankui, the man who edited human DNA and shocked the world. For most of human history, our genes were something we could never change. They determined our eye color, height, disease risks, and countless other traits. DNA was our biological destiny. But everything began to change with a revolutionary technology known as CRISPR. CRISPR works like a pair of molecular scissors. Scientists can locate a specific gene inside DNA, cut it, and replace it with new genetic information. For the first time in history, humanity gained the ability to edit the code of life itself. The potential benefits were enormous. Scientists imagined curing genetic diseases such as cystic fibrosis, sickle cell anemia, muscular dystrophy. Diseases caused by faulty genes could potentially be eliminated before a child was even born. But this power came with a frightening possibility. If genes could be edited to cure diseases, they could also be edited to enhance humans. Stronger bodies, higher intelligence, designer babies. And this raised a terrifying ethical question. Just because we can edit human DNA, does that mean we should? The man at the center of this story was a Chinese scientist named He Jiankui. Born in China in 1984, He Jiankui grew up fascinated by science and technology. He later studied physics and biotechnology, eventually earning a PhD in the United States. He worked at prestigious universities, including Rice University. After returning to China, he became a professor at the Southern University of Science and Technology. But He Jiankui was not satisfied with ordinary scientific progress. He wanted to make history. He wanted to achieve something no scientists had ever done before: editing the genes of human embryos and allowing those embryos to grow into living children. It was an experiment so controversial that many scientists believed it should never be attempted. But He Jiankui believed the world was ready. Or perhaps he believed he could be the one who would change it forever. Around 2017, He Jiankui quietly began a secret research project. He recruited couples in which the father was HIV positive. His goal was to modify a gene called CCR5. This gene plays a role in how HIV enters human cells. Some people naturally have mutations in CCR5 that make them resistant to HIV infection. He Jiankui believed he could recreate this mutation using CRISPR. Here's how the experiment worked. First, embryos were created using in vitro fertilization, or IVF. Then scientists used CRISPR to cut and modify the CCR5 gene in the embryo's DNA. If the editing worked correctly, the child would theoretically have genetic resistance to HIV. But this was not a simple medical procedure. This was germline editing. That means the genetic changes would not only affect the child, they could also be passed down to future generations. In other words, the experiment wasn't just altering two babies, it was altering the human gene pool itself. Then came the announcement that stunned the world. In November 2018, He Jiankui released a video online. In it, he claimed that two baby girls had already been born. He gave them the pseudonyms Lulu and Nana. According to him, they were the first genetically edited humans in history. Their DNA had been altered before birth using CRISPR technology. If true, this was one of the most important and controversial events in modern science. But the reaction from scientists was immediate, and it was not celebration. It was shock. Many experts said the experiment was reckless and unethical. Some even called it a violation of scientific responsibility. One of the pioneers of CRISPR technology, Jennifer Doudna, warned that humanity was entering extremely dangerous territory. The scientific community had previously agreed that human germline editing should not be used to create babies until the technology was proven safe, and it was far from safe. CRISPR is powerful, but it is not perfect. Gene editing can produce off-target effects. This means the technology might accidentally change other parts of the genome. These unintended mutations could potentially cause genetic diseases, developmental problems, increased cancer risk. Another concern was mosaicism. This happens when not all cells in the embryo receive the same genetic edit. As a result, the child could end up with a mixture of edited and unedited cells. The long-term effects of such changes are completely unknown. But the biggest concern of all was ethical. For the first time, a scientist had created genetically modified humans, and the children themselves had no ability to consent to this experiment. The backlash was immediate and intense. Scientists around the world condemned the experiment. Universities, research institutions, and governments demanded investigations. China quickly launched an official inquiry. The results were devastating for He Jiankui. Authorities concluded that he had violated scientific ethics and regulations. In 2019, a Chinese court sentenced him to 3 years in prison for illegal medical practices. The university where he worked immediately distanced itself from the project. Many scientists said the incident had damaged the reputation of genetic research worldwide. But the story raised an even bigger question: what happens next? Despite the controversy, gene editing technology continues to advance rapidly. Scientists are now exploring ways to use CRISPR safely to treat diseases in adults. Researchers are developing treatments for conditions such as inherited blood disorders, certain cancers, rare genetic diseases. But most experts agree on one thing: editing the genes of embryos that will become children remains an extremely sensitive issue. Some believe the technology could eventually eliminate devastating genetic diseases. Others fear it could lead to a world of genetic inequality, a future where only the wealthy can afford genetically enhanced children. And that raises a final question: is humanity ready to control its own evolution? The story of He Jiankui is more than a scientific controversy. It is a glimpse into the future. A future where humans may have the power to rewrite the very code of life. The technology exists, the possibilities are enormous, but so are the risks. Because once humanity begins editing its own DNA,